where does Melania Trump really live? That's the question that we're trying to address. And the Daily Beast had an interesting piece that had the subheading, Melania's Hidden Life. And it intrigued me because I was like, what are we talking about here? And the title is, I've found where Melania Trump really lives. Now that sounds very doxy. It's not doxing. This is relevant to his lawsuit. So let's back up. Then I'll show you this clip where he explains the news that he's explaining, which is he got threatened by Melania Trump because Michael Wolff, this journalist who communicated a lot with Jeffrey Epstein, a little bit too much, but was doing journalism also. So, but he was in reporting on all the things he'd learned from Jeffrey Epstein, the interviews he'd done with him and all that. He noted that Epstein claimed he introduced Melania to Donald Trump. Melania hated when people would say that, and so she threatened to sue Michael Wolff. Michael Wolff said, let me have it. You can try to sue me. Then later, Trump said he's going to sue Michael Wolff. So then, leveraging anti-SLAPP laws, which is like protecting free speech and trying to fend off the legal harassment from the Trumps, you got Michael Wolff doing a preemptive defensive lawsuit. Okay, so Melania didn't actually bring the lawsuit, but she was threatening him legally. So then with the anti-SLAPP stuff, he's going, I'm suing you first to punish you for trying to suppress my free speech. Okay, so that's where we left off. We already talked about that. But now you have relevant to serving the lawsuit to her and to where the case is litigated, which is relevant given the New York laws versus Florida laws around this type of stuff, and how friendly of a court this could get in for Wolff or Trump. Melania is claiming her primary residence is in Florida. Michael Wolff is saying, really? Because I think it's in New York, which would serve his lawsuit better if it were actually in New York.
I think it's extraordinary. I mean, there is no
And by the way, I love that he's bringing this lawsuit. Because if you could do some investigatory work through the process of litigation, that would be a great public service.
On her part to hide where she is. And I think what's happened here is clearly the White House did not wanted to frustrate any discussion of Melania and Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. So they did their reflexive thing. They sent me a letter, we're going to sue you for $1 billion if you don't retract and hide under a rock about this.
Just the quickest pause to request that you click the subscribe button, the simplest, easiest, freest way, completely free, to support the work that we do. Right below the video, click that subscribe button. Back to the video.
And they did this because they do it all the time and everybody capitulates and says, okay. I did not, for reasons related to both my temperament and the fact that I have willing lawyers, and not to mention 25,000 willing supporters on GoFundMe. So I did not. I turned around and sued them, which now puts them in this position of having to justify where actually the First Lady or the theoretical First Lady lives. So somebody in the White House, I cannot believe somebody in the legal hierarchy is not going to catch hell for this, because this is actually this is the question of the day in this lawsuit. Where does she live? They are either going to have to prove that they live in Florida, or accept the fact that she lives in New York. And this is a kind of a message to the country and to history itself. The First Lady does not live with the President of the United States. Their relationship is remote at best, and I think we can probably say well, certainly of a different nature than any president and first lady has ever had. Not to mention that to our point, the nature of this is that she lives in New York and he lives somewhere else.
The biggest shock for me was not.
And then we'll listen to more of that in just a second. But that's notable in that, and I'm going to tell you something you probably have never heard before. Okay. I have a source inside the White House that told me Melania and Donald aren't very close to each other. So, just kidding. That's everyone knows that. No, so I guess that is one of the takeaways. Like, it's kind of funny that for seemingly the first time that I can remember in American history, the first lady's not even barely the first lady. She's just kind of doing her own thing in New York or maybe going down to Mar-a-Lago. But what you learned that I do want to add for context, if you watch the Melania documentary, is that she does go places. She moves around, like she goes and walks around, and she does things sometimes. And that's pretty profound, the way that you watch throughout the telling of this movie, that there's like sort of not a climax here, but then what's interesting is that it builds to then not a climax. And after that, they follow it with like a really powerful not climax. And then she walks in a plane. You say, where is she going? Oh, she's going back to her New York penthouse. Okay, well, what's next? Oh, she's going back to Mar-a-Lago. Okay, but then something really interesting is going to happen. Now she's back at the New York penthouse having her dress designed. So I think that that's notable. I think that's notable and an accomplishment.
Booyah, Navy!
But she is doing Be Best still, and for that, we applaud her. No, in all honesty, I'm sure there's initiatives. I'm sure there's First Lady office initiatives that are even fine, maybe. But you can tell she doesn't want to have much to do with the actual Trump of it all. She'll do things over here as First Lady, but actually being around Trump much is not her favorite. But we've already discussed that plenty. That's just the most overdone thing ever. What I'm more fascinated with here is that where she actually lives, I guess, is relevant to how he brings the lawsuit. Because number one, they've been having a difficult time serving the lawsuit, like serving the lawsuit papers, which we still do that. Isn't that so weird? Like, you've been served. But then I guess it's because you need to know that they actually got notice of it. But I don't know. It feels like you could find an easier way. But where to serve it and where he can litigate this case, and he'd much prefer to do it in New York because of their strong anti-SLAPP laws.
Not just that she lives in New York, but she's got her own apartment in Trump Tower. And I think that's something that has been rumoured and talked about, but you've nailed it down here.
No, it's funny because I had known this has always been a kind of discussion in the in the Trump circle, the his hers nature of where they live in, or where they have resided in for many years in Trump Tower, and the two apartments look completely dissimilar. I mean, his is that Rococo Trump, and hers is kind of sleek, minimalist Melania.
Okay, so I don't know what that last part was necessarily for substantively, but let me just give you a little bit more to substantiate what I'm talking about here. So Wolf sued in New York State court in October after Trump had threatened to sue for $1 billion for claiming in an episode that Melania was involved in Epstein's circle. Wolf's suit was filed under the state's anti-SLAPP law, which is designed to prevent the silencing of First Amendment activities. It will give Wolf subpoena power once Trump has been served. Ooh, which would be very interesting. Wolf said he has received donations up to $800,000. And so because of New York's anti-SLAPP laws, I guess, are particularly strong, he's wanting to prove that she lives primarily in New York. Then he can have a little bit of extra mojo going on into potentially having subpoena power against the Trumps to force them into disclosing all sorts of interesting things. And this is all by Melania Trump's own doing. I'll remind you, she didn't have to threaten everyone with lawsuits for mentioning that Epstein would claim he introduced them. Then we get a document out of the Epstein files that claims indeed Epstein introduced them. which isn't a crime, as Scott Jennings would say, but it's kind of notable, I'd argue.